Capitalism is a religious belief. Said it before. I will most likely say it again. And in fact, I would even say it again now. Capitalism is a religious belief. It's a thought form. Whether you want to talk about God or Jesus or Allah or Krishna or whatever else you want to talk about. I mean, for all intents and purposes, instead of looking up to this ethereal being in some other worldly dimension, this thing that's held in our hands, this piece of paper, this cash as we call it, it's also a fictitious creation of sorts. Yes, you hold it in your hand, but the thing that you're holding in your hand is not really cash per se. That's just fabric. They try to make it as if capitalism is some kind of natural thing. It's no more natural than plastic. Ultimately, it's based on what people believe. It's not chalked up that way, but that's exactly what it is. It is a thought form, just like Jesus or Christianity or Islam, whatever else, is a thought form. It's what people walk around with in their heads as they process the world. In this case, people prostrate themselves so for this particular creation. Now, this particular creation has a certain power because this creation determines whether or not you're going to eat, where you're going to sleep, whether or not you're going to have anywhere to sleep at all, whether you're going to get medical attention, and if so, the quality of that medical attention. It essentially governs your life. So it's understandable that people prostrate themselves in pursuit of this particular thing. Man has become subordinate to his own creation in a way that none of these other religions has ever been able to accomplish. I say that for a reason. I try to make a distinction in between real things and unreal things. And from the standpoint of order of concerns, real things matter. Fact of the matter is, you can't eat the paper that you're holding in your hand. You can't put it in your gas tank. You can't build your house with it. It's a medium of exchange between those things. And it's a medium of exchange that is purely in your head. If the government fell apart tomorrow, that money will be worthless. Its only value is that you give it value, or that the collective of the human, of us, gives it value. There's a difference between real things and unreal things. Like I said, order of concerns, real things matter more. Somebody having a certain degree of money, or in this case, digits in a bank account, matters less to me than a human being that's suffering and needs something to eat, or a child that needs something to eat, or a human being that needs somewhere to stay. It matters more real things. Pursuant to that, the planet itself is also a real thing. We are a ball flying through space. And as a ball flying through space, we live in a habitable environment. And that habitable environment has certain rules, like anything else, that are somewhat cause and effect, that don't necessarily care about our unreal thought forms or religions. In the same way that you believing in Jesus is not going to stop you from going down in a plane crash, and you believing in Allah or is not going to stop the United States from destroying your country and making your life a living hell, this belief in cash is not in any way going to prevent your habitable zone or habitable space from being utterly destroyed based on the behaviors you're taking on that habitable space or in that zone. I say that to say this. In the way that we go about our affairs, we forget that. In fact, we even ignore that. The person who's working at a particular company goes in, they play their Xbox, they have sex with their wife, they drink their coffee, and that's their life. And they rinse and repeat and they do it over and over and over and over again. Missing the fact that we're a ball hurling through space and there are certain rules governing our habitable space. If you're doing things that is destroying your environment, the human being will suffer the consequences of the destruction of that particular environment. And fortunately, we've grown enough as a species and we've learned enough as a species to try to understand some of the rules governing the space to which we live. Part of that has to do with, let's just say, environmental costs. Now, there are two parts to this. In the first part, like I said, if human beings are suffering as a response to what is taking place, then there's something wrong. Now, if we are having an argument on what's the best system, I can't necessarily tell an individual if they think they're okay with a particular capitalistic system. Fair enough. It's their choice. It's their, they can make up their mind on whatever they want. If we're having a conversation, however, on what maintains our life or what maintains a standard of living, that's a different conversation. Fact of the matter is, we are being told by the scientists on this planet, the overwhelming majority of scientists on this planet, that the system to which we've organized ourselves around is killing us. For one, it's making life inhospitable for just the individuals from an economic standpoint. I mean, for fuck's sake, you have bakers and haberdashers and cooks and electricians and engineers, the guy who works on the line, the guy who's doing the train, the guy who's fixing your coffee. All of these people make up your life and make up your society, and yet 95% of the worth that they've created just in the way that they've gone about their affairs have gone to the top 1%. 95%. And that was under a Democratic president that they call a socialist and a communist. And they're shocked as shit that Donald Trump gets elected. And instead of dealing with that, they call him sexist and racist and all this other stuff. Beyond that particular point, and calling him sexist and racist, they keep ticking along Russia without actually dealing with the amelioration of the working class. 95% of the wealth. Trump is going to max that out. He gave a massive tax cut to the top 1% and put more wealth or more cost on our backs to the tune of trillions. Not to mention trying to go around and give another tax cut. And just in case a Democrat is saying, yeah, you're right, just imagine or just keep in mind, Hillary Clinton was also going to give a massive tax cut. Maybe not to the degree of Trump, but she would have also given a massive tax cut. Beyond that particular point, the absurdity of that all of these people make up the society from the standpoint of the labor that's taken place, that the wealth gets sucked to the top and goes to the top 1%. On top of that, you have externalized costs. So the cost of doing business themselves, meaning from the companies, gets pushed on to the individual. That's not always in terms of fictitious cash. Sometimes that's in terms of real things. One of those real things, like I said, has to be environment. How can that be ignored in any process of thinking about what type of system that the individuals want to live in? Take a look at this. People always say, dude, you should recycle and all this other stuff. And the media has a tendency of pushing this on people. Fact of the matter is, where is it? 100 companies responsible for 71% of the global emissions. Just 100 companies. Meaning, when you see a bullshit story about, oh, you should recycle, yes, you should recycle. Oh, you should do this or you should do that. Yes, you should do this and you should do that. But let's be very clear that the responsibility here, a lot of this, boils down to the companies themselves that suck up the cash that you and I produce. 100 companies, 71% of the global emissions. Here's another thing. Exxon knew about climate change 40 years ago, but they buried the research. Meaning one of those 100 companies that's responsible for 71% of the emissions knew very goddamn well that the planet was on fire, that there was an asteroid that's going to hit the planet. And instead of telling people about the asteroid that's going to hit the planet, instead of dealing with the asteroid that's going to hit the planet, they buried it. Not just buried it, shuffled off money to congressmen so the Republicans can say it's not real and it doesn't exist. And for Democrats to be weak and ineffectual and doing anything about it. That's fucking amazing. There are real things and there are unreal things. But within the capitalistic system, they accrue wealth and value that wouldn't exist outside of that system. So what do? They fight to maintain the system, even when it's on fire. If this planet goes, they go too, but they're going to be dead and in the ground before the real effects of the stuff takes hold. That's amazing. A religious belief. That's an utter religious belief. How is that not a religious belief? A capitalistic system fighting to maintain itself in the face of a real reality. That real reality being we're a planet that has a habitable zone, and if we trespass certain scientific rules, we will suffer. Well, this company is trying to maximize its profit, being good capitalists. And being good capitalists trying to maximize its profit, it buried the science. So now it became a political issue instead of a scientific issue. Because the argument is, and the fact of the matter is, it is difficult to maintain a capitalistic system if it is the capitalistic system that is burning the world to a cinder. Let's go further. A new report from Global Carbon Project anticipates right here, carbon emissions are predicted to hit a record high in 2018. Whatever they're doing, it's not working. Whatever they're doing is not working. The world's carbon dioxide emissions reached their apex this year, setting a troubling historic high, according to a new report published on Wednesday by the International Research Cooperative. Global carbon emissions are projected to increase by 2.7% in 2018, following a growth of 1.6% in 2017, the report found. These estimates mean that this year, Earth is set to emit roughly 37.1 billion metric tons of carbon, a number the New York Times compared to 100 times the weight of the Empire State Building. That's a waste material. That's no different than them putting stuff in your water or dumping stuff in the water or dumping stuff into the air. That is stuff that we are breathing. Those externalized costs. Those are costs that the companies themselves are not necessarily dealing with and shoving it off to you. They're shoving it off to you not necessarily purely in the terms of this fictitious thing of cash, but in the air that you breathe and water that you drink. And in this case, the fact that your planet is on fire. The planet is on fire. What are people doing about it? Look at this. In Britain, a group called Extinction Rebellion are getting thrown in prison. Because, right here, you have 12 years. The UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released a special report last month outlining scenarios, consequences, and preventative measures to maintain a habitable world. With 91 authors, 166 contributing authors, 42,000 experts and government review comments, and over 6,000 scientific references, the report comes to the world's top authority on climate science. Your world's scientists have come together and come to a consensus. And in this consensus, given a conservative estimate, they said you have 12 years left. You have 12 years to fix your planet, to get your house in order. 12 years. That's it. Now, in Cataways, which is a train ride away from me at this point, some of these scientists have come out and said, you don't have 12 years left. We're already fucked. But others, given a more conservative estimate, 12 years. But if 12 years is your conservative estimate, what are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? Isn't that pretty fucking amazing? I mean, this is an existential crisis. And we're having conversations about, like this is some kind of debate. There are people who are taking action. Extinction Rebellion are getting thrown in prison to show how serious global warming is. They made headlines last week as a super gluing themselves to the UK Business and Energy Department. Then they spray painted 3 government buildings and, top it off all Saturday, convened thousands to blockade the bridges in central London. All that was a week's work for the newly formed environmental group Extinction Rebellion. They appear to be serious about the rebellion part, and the number of arrests pushing 150. Of course they're serious about it. Their world is at stake. There's an asteroid that's going to hit the planet. Why do they have to fight this hard with an asteroid being about to hit the planet? Here's another one. Climate strike. Students walk out in Australia. The beautiful part about this that I love, the Prime Minister of Australia essentially cautioned them about going out. He urged the students not to take part in this or to be less activists. They told him to kick rocks. Thousands left. This is going to be their planet. This is the planet that they're supposed to inhabit. Many of these people are going to be dead and gone. They're going to be the ones that are going to be inhabiting this world, this burnt cinder. Yes, they will be activists. They will go out. They will be monstrous in their opposition to this because the world is at stake. Let's take another look in the United States. Right here. And look at the condescension in the Democratic senators. You already see right here. Nobody who's getting money from these companies, nobody, PACs or whatever, should be making legislation that would affect people in general. In fact of the matter is, campaign finance laws need to be in effect where people are not receiving money from these industries. Super PACs shouldn't exist. PACs shouldn't exist. Public funding of elections. Get billionaires and millionaires out of the decision-making process from the standpoint of elected leaders. Look at this. I love this. It's epic.
Take fossil fuel.
Well, that's the difference. I don't even know how to define that. I mean, I don't,
From oil, gas, and coal executive?
How old are you?
I'm 19.
You're 19. I've been working on this longer than before you were born.
7, 8. Which side up?
You've been working on this longer than she's been born. That means you've been failing on this longer than she's been born. That's... now you call. That means you've been failing on this for the time that you've been born. I mean, let's be very clear. You want to point that out saying, hey, we've been working on this longer than you've been born. You've been failing on this. Your president, God of Oil Obama, expanded oil and gas pipelines to unprecedented extents. And on top of that, the person who was running for the Democrat was selling fracking across the world. Now, your party, you might have been working on this since she was born. I would argue you've been failing on this since before she was born, which is why they are there now in your office. And they were in Nancy Pelosi's office, last week. Let's keep going. Let's let them do their thing.
Are you on now? Which side are you on?
How old are you?
I'm 19.
You're 19. I've been working on this longer than before you were born.
7, 8. Which side are you on now? Which side are you on? Tell me. Which side are you on?
We need you today, Representative Plone, to take the No Fossil Fuel Money pledge and to support Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Committee for a Green New Deal.
We are very concerned that the special committee is just a, bureaucratic, element that would be injected in here that would delay the climate agenda.
I don't think you realize that you're preaching to the choir, because this is, and we recognize this is an existential issue.
If you
look at our
agree
fires
that this is the
and the lives
greatest
lost in
existential threat
California.
of our
Yeah.
lives,
Tyler,
why would you not support
we're your
Alexandria
partners.
Ocasio-Cortez's Select Committee for a Green New Deal?
Because
it's
actually the bureaucracy.
But it's not. It's the
it
actual
isn't.
only real solution that we have seen that addresses the scope and scale of the crisis.
So what about this?
Why
How
don't you
about
be our
you pledge
partners
not
in
to
this?
take fossil fuel money?
Well, that's the difference. I don't even
Why
know
is it
how
a
to
different
define
issue?
that. I mean, I don't,
From
I don't
oil,
even,
gas, and coal executives
but oil
refusing?
and gas, who are the oil and gas people that give to me? They hate
I don't
me.
think. I don't.
Cause fossil fuels keep paying you. Doesn't weigh on you at all. Which side are you on? Which side?
I
Records
assure
that
you
you've taken
that
over $130,000.
Which side are you on? Which side you on? Which side?
Representative, which side are you on?
all right, would you just make sure you give us at least the two of your phone numbers, and we'll get back to you, all right? All right.
Are you on?
Right there. I love that. Frank Pallone is making excuses while the world burns. Love that. Be uncompromising. Your world is at stake. This idea of, oh, we'll get back to you. Screw that. I love this protest. I love the fact that you're going into their offices. The Republican Party is bought. They've taken the position that it doesn't exist. The Democratic Party is stuck in this weird quagmire where they say it exists, but we don't necessarily want to do anything major about it. Be uncompromising. Crowd their offices. I love it. These student protests that are taking place around the world, I love it. And by the way, you have the support of Americans, even though it looks like November says 72% of Americans say climate should be higher in priority, with half saying it should be a top priority. Personally, I think amelioration of the working class should be the top priority. I think issues of class should be a top priority, with the scope of climate change being tucked under that, or both of those things being done at the same time. But I suspect that's why you lose half or what, 22% of the people when you ask them should it be a top priority. But it's not one or the other. It can be both. I mean, yeah, it could be both. This video has already gone too long, so I'm not going to keep this much longer. I love this protest. I love the fact that they're crowding these offices. I love the fact that they're in their faces. Because fact of the matter is there's an asteroid that's going to hit the planet. And they're being real casual about the fact that there's an asteroid that's going to hit the planet. You have 12 years! I mean, for fuck's sake! The people who build the shit, who investigate our world, investigate our universe, this is not, you know, what happens after you die. This is not this ethereal stuff about, you know, new agey spirit and all this other stuff. No, this is physics. This is where they're looking at the science and they're saying, look, this is our appraisal of what's taking place. And fact of the matter is, even if they're wrong, you just get a better world. Clean water, cleaner air. Not to mention the jobs that are going to come from this unprecedented World War II style effort, Marshall Plan like effort of tackling this issue. Yeah, it needs to change. There needs to be an unprecedented level of change to address this particular issue. So I'll leave this here. 12 years. 12 years. I don't know how people are casual about the fact that they're saying your world is going to expire. This puts me in mind of a Voyager episode. And in the Voyager episode, they go to a planet that's made of water. And going to a planet that's made of water, the containment of the planet starts to leak out into space. And Tom Paris goes down and inspects, and they find out the manufacturing of energy that particular planet is doing is essentially destroying the planet. At some point within a few hundred years, it's going to essentially be non-existent. And Tom Paris addresses them, shows them the evidence, and they said, just like Pallone, just give me your number, we'll deal with it later. You guys can leave. Tom Paris was like, what the fuck? The most rational thing in the world to say. Your world is at stake. And you're giving me this bullshit answer? And then the guy gets indignant saying, I got brain in the veins because I've been on this planet longer than you have, which doesn't really matter because ultimately he's just told you that your planet is ending. The habitable space to which you live is ending. And you're telling me to get back with you later. We'll get back with you later. They even gave them a new energy method, and they didn't want to change it. Tom Paris gets locked up because he tries to go and essentially take a terrorist action, but the terrorist action was to save the planet. His own ship had to stop him from doing it because the fact of the matter is, it's their planet. It's not his planet to try to make that decision for. If they want to destroy that planet, they can destroy that planet. I would urge us strongly that if the system to which you are existing in and the religious belief, this overlay on real reality is causing your planet such trauma, which means that will cause you trauma as it makes your life harder and more difficult, maybe you need to evaluate whether or not that's a system to which you want to stay in. A better world is possible. A better world is possible. Believe it and put it into action. I'll leave this here. Like I said, this video is going massively too long. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. The links are at the bottom, and like my wife likes to say, even $1 helps. Thanks all.